mute because I'm bad at that. Hey, YouTube, I'm Richard. Welcome back to the RPG Daily. We got another great show lined up today. I'm here with my guest, Chris Smith, aka IronBark from Rukvar's Crusade. Welcome to the show, Chris. It's good to have you and to get to chat with you today.
Yeah, hello. Thank you. This is going to be fun.
Before we dive into your character, can you tell me a little about yourself? Like, what do you do? How long have you been playing D&D and so forth?
Um, okay, so the job is pretty mundane. Just do repairs and stuff. It sort of just gets me by, pays for things, pays for the flat. Other than that, really, really into films, gaming, podcasts, the whole, all of that media stuff. But I've been playing D&D, I think, about a year now. And it was my best friend. He tried convincing me, Marcus. I don't know if he's watching, but he tried convincing me to play, and I was just like, no, I don't know if it's for me. I'd heard about it, didn't really know much. So yeah, I'd say about a year. This is my third campaign, I'd say. First was Curse of Strahd, and I joined that at level 5, and we finished at level 11. And then the second one was sort of a mini one. I'd say it was like 3 or 4 sessions, and then a sort of follow-up to that, which is about 3 or 4 sessions in. And then this one as well. So yeah, I'm pretty new, but I do a lot of gaming, so I read a lot of the rules, and I've absorbed a lot of content, been watching all sorts of stuff. Really into it now. I wish I'd listened to my friend sooner.
What was the moment? When did that change of heart happen for you to say, like, yeah, okay, I'll dive in?
I think my friend, he got me to listen to some D&D podcasts to see if I'd be interested. And there was one called Not Another D&D Podcast, or NAD Pod, which is some old College Humor guys, which I used to watch way back when. And they do like they've done a sort of, it's just the 4 of them, there's 3 players, 1 DM. And they've done a sort of short, I'd say 100 episodes, but they're only a couple of hours each session. But yeah, no, they're it's very, very funny, very, very cool. And then I just went along to one. And the group that we play with, actually, I only play with one other group other than you guys, and everyone's like all walks of life, all sort of ages. It's a really cool, diverse mix. We met some like really interesting people.
How did you get into that group?
Yeah, so that was the one that my friend was playing at. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And what actually happened was he was sort of the tank of the group. He was the sort of paladin, and he was going to China to do some teaching of English before everything happened over a year ago. Which has all been drama for him coming back and everything since the virus. But he was like, oh man, they really need another tank, because they're all like druids and wizards and a rogue and a cleric, and he's like, man, they really need a front line. So I made my big boy barbarian, and yeah, he was a bear totem barbarian, and he just stood there and he took the beatings that other people couldn't, and that was his job, and it was really very fun.
Nice. And now here you are,
really cool.
still playing. Have you got to run any games yourself yet?
I ran a very short one for just a couple friends. That was very late in the evenings, short sessions. It's just one that I actually came up with it. It was based on some sort of H.P. Lovecraft type stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was like a lot of like horror elements and psychic damage and seeing things that are so unnatural that they damage you, stuff like that. And that was really fun. It had to get cut short, unfortunately, because a couple of players couldn't keep playing. But that's still in the back of my mind. I really love Lovecraft. Everything Lovecraft. So yeah.
There's some messed up stuff with the Lovecraft. I played in one LARP.
Yeah.
That this is my LARP tangent. I've done LARPing on the side. I'm trying to hopefully get back into it when COVID clears up a little bit. But we did one that was a Lovecraftian, like, cosmic horror kind of thing that was dealing with the King in Yellow. Which I think is a normal character.
Yeah, the thing is, like all of the Lovecraftian gods, they've all got like 100 names.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I know who it is, but I forget their name. Yeah, but yeah, there's the one in my one was called like the main villain was going to turn out to be a near architect. But the interesting thing about like the Lovecraftian gods is that they're so beyond, like the cosmic power is so beyond like anything in D&D, like the D&D gods and stuff. Like you can't fight them. Like even if
Yeah.
the entire party's level 20, there's nothing you can do, and that's sort of the horror of it. It's like everything is actually futile. It all turns out to mean nothing. And I think that's really interesting.
That is something interesting, and I have mixed emotions about that kind of thing, because I like the idea of, like in a D&D game, the players being so powerful that they can fight gods, and they can be that strong, and at level 20 they're supposed to kind of be that way. But then at the same time, it's like, but they shouldn't, you know, so I'm constantly torn. All my games end up with people being that strong and fighting, you know, the big monsters or something like that, but it's a tough balance to hit. So
my idea was that the gods that we know in D&D existed as well, and they had sort of been like creations or experiment rewrote the lore a little bit. They had been like creations of Nyarlathotep, who's then gone into a slumber.
okay.
And so they're just ruling things, essentially not knowing where they came from or anything like that, and that they could be sort of, when the players got to a certain level, they could be brought into the fold to try and just banish it instead of, you can't beat it, just kick it out. But it would have been like the players and the gods together, which I think
that could have been interesting.
Yeah, Avengers Endgame type war with
basically
monsters and stuff. But yeah, unfortunately it didn't get that far. But yeah, it could still be definitely continued one day. I hope to DM more. Just finding the time, really.
All right, I think you could have a knack for it once you like really dive in, and then you get stuck being the DM.
Yes, forever
become
DM.
the forever DM, like a lot of us are. Let's talk about the game, because it got a little crazy.
Yeah.
So anyone watching, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen session 3, a lot happens. Because, like I've mentioned, the whole campaign, we're just compressing everything into these 4 sessions. And you guys went, not off the rails, but you went out there. You put yourselves out there and went to go take on the bad guy, kind of. Went to fight Rukvar. But let's rewind a little bit, and tell me about IronBark.
What about him?
Everything. Yeah, you.
Okay.
Why a Warforged? Let's start there. Why a Warforged?
Okay, so so it goes a little bit further back. So the first character was that Goliath barbarian, just very manly, grunting all the time, talking like that, and he's just, you know, a very stoic sort of hero. Then my second character was a ranger with a cowboy accent, and the third character, and they're all quite. He was a human, and then my third character, with the one that I'm playing at the moment, is so involved with the story. Like he's a Zariel tiefling, and we're playing Descent into Avernus, which Zariel is in. Then he's a warlock, and his patron is Bel, the other devil who we might run into.
Okay.
DM sort of worked this all out with me. So he's super involved with the story. He's also the son of the cowboy character who I played in there's a crossover there. So I've always played these characters which are kind of like really, I don't know, they're kind of edgy, kind of cool, kind of badass. And I wanted to try something a little bit, not the center of attention, I think, at times for the story, just somebody who is there and sort of watching other characters do things. And I think that a Warforged would be quite good for that. They're not going to be, you know, chatting all the time and the most charismatic. And then a druid, I really need to get away from playing like martial classes, and the druid is the first step to do that. I couldn't go full wizard or sorcerer, but I'm trying. Got some spell slots this time, which is fun. But I don't know. I think a mixture of those things, wanting to be less like let other players really do more than maybe I have in other campaigns, and have a little bit of magic, just sort of brought those together. And I was looking at Art of Warforged and saw that they had like wooden parts to them as well, like they were made of organic material and metal. And I was like, that'd be cool for a druid, like with a wooden staff and then the wooden body, and then it
Yeah.
just kept going. And I think he's a really cool character. I really like him. I'm quite proud of him. But he's got a pretty harrowing backstory.
Yeah, which let's get into a little bit of his backstory, because unfortunately in the game we don't have a lot of time to dive into the backstories of the characters all that often. So yeah, so where did Warforged come from? And then after that we'll talk about because you did a really cool thing that I thought, where you came to me and you were like, here's my ideas, how can we make this work? And then we worked together to come up with your backstory a little bit. And I want to talk about that because I think that process is something that's actually kind of difficult for a lot of players, is the backstory. So fill me in on the backstory of where did IronBark come from?
Okay, so IronBark is, can I say which era he's from?
Yeah, you could. It's
Okay.
kind of come out in the game, so I think it's
Yeah.
fine.
I think it was before the third session, wasn't it? If people haven't seen the third.
Yes, it came out in the end of the second session that he was
Okay, cool.
from.
So, counter to what was previously thought by the party, IronBark is from the future. He's from the end of the Fourth Age. So, I was aware of the overarching sort of story of the world that you were making, and I won't say too much, but I knew that I wanted him to sort of come from an interesting sort of war-torn time where the Warforged would be from. They are sort of specifically created for war. So yeah, he was created by the goblin scientists that work under Gok, who is the sort of hobgoblin demigod in the future, who is also apparently in our campaign somehow thousands and thousands of years in the past. And he was created for war. He fought against the alliance of the humans, elves, dwarves. Kind of took a bit of inspiration there from World of Warcraft with the Horde and the Alliance. And he just got so severely damaged in a battle, and he just couldn't continue the fight. They didn't know what to do with himself, so he just started walking away from the fight. And this just barren landscape. It's sort of a steampunky type future, but I imagine like there's very little resources left in the world. Nature is, almost gone. It's all been sort of destroyed in this huge war. And he wanders into something called the Oasis, which is an idea I think you actually had for this like sort of magical hub of like nature. This heart of nature that exists at all times at the same time, and has like this sort of really ancient magic there. But yeah, he wanders in there and basically just dies. I think it was Unit 02496, which is 69420 backwards. It was
I didn't catch that when I was reading it. I didn't catch that. Okay.
It was very important to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, he actually died, and I don't know how many centuries might have passed, hundreds, and he sort of awoke again, and he was beginning to get infused with the magic of this place that had replaced this sort of twisted magic that the goblins had created for the sentience almost in these Warforged. And he awoke, but he was like trapped inside a tree. And he had sort of previously, he didn't really have full sentience during his war and when he was a fighter. And so he's beginning to develop consciousness and thought in this place, and was blinking in and out of like this great slumber, and he was watching things that would happen here. So different animals, different druids would come there, different ceremonies. He saw like these druids save a mother and a child in childbirth's life, and something that he was so foreign to him, just being born into war. All this stuff that sort of like wizened him up to how the world really is and what life is. And I guess didn't make him envious, but sort of sad maybe that he would never have a true life.
Yeah.
He wasn't a life form. He could never have children. He wasn't born, things like this. And so, yeah, he he was sort of infused with this magic. The little bird came and lived in his chest. That was part of the tree trunk. And then, you know, I guess there's a bit of where he crosses over with Arsalan's backstory. Um,
Mhm.
Arsalan came into the Oasis specifically seeking IronBark or power, and he could have harvested what energy was left, the nature energy in IronBark for himself, but he chose to awaken him
Mhm.
and treat him as another life. And I think that, like, sorry, it's so hot in here. I don't know if I'm
Oh,
shiny. Um, it's he, yeah, he awoke IronBark and sort of treated him as a person, and I think that really inspired him to continue and be better. I think he had like quite a depressing sort of start to life, so I like that he's more curious and more hopeful going forward. Um, I mean, I know that there was a moment at the end of the third session there where I thought he he almost like gave up again at the end there,
yeah, I felt
in a
like I
sort of
almost broke you
self-sacrificing
guys
way. Yeah.
for that moment. Go into like what was the thought process in IronBark's mind in that moment, and can you like recap what happened there?
So it's kind of difficult, I think, fun, challenging, but it's difficult to roleplay something that is he's thousands and thousands of years old. He's seen so much, but doesn't know so much, and he still perhaps lacks some empathy and understanding. Um, but there was a moment there where he thought maybe he could take the burden of the potion of Gok, like the blood of Gok, um, onto himself and just
Mm-hmm.
hide himself away and just like essentially like switch off and just like die and hide and solve everyone else's problems, um, and sort of just commit sort of suicide again or continue the fight. Um, and he wanted to avoid war as best he could, but yeah, he took the latter choice, and so we got a big old fight at the end of the session. Um, but yeah, I think it's an interesting thought. I think it was a smart choice for him to maybe try and do something like that, but it might not necessarily be the right choice.
I think sometimes the right choice and the smart choice, are rarely the same thing. Sometimes,
Yeah,
but that's was what I was trying to get you guys to play with your guys' minds a little bit in that case. Is like, where is the, what is the right thing to do here? What is best? Because you are kind of, especially from the IronBark perspective, this is a really strange situation where you're encountering this demigod that is trapped away and hidden, seemingly where he can't impact the world, but then you know that later on he does in a big way, thousands of years down the line. And I thought you really leaned into that concept of like, it was essentially like a Warforged having their mind kind of blown for a minute of like, what? This doesn't make sense. What's happening? What's going
yeah,
on? I appreciated you leaning into that, so I thought that was a really fun moment for me to
yeah,
watch. Um,
yeah. I hope it wasn't. I didn't talk for too long about what he was thinking, what I was thinking. But honestly, like time travel, time travel can be really, really difficult. But I really liked the challenge that you brought up with that. It's like, I mean, what our characters do now, could that be like every action we take? Could that just be what leads to everything happening? And is there any way for IronBark, I think, to impact the future and stop that huge war happening, that was sort of initiated by Gok in the future? I mean, yeah, if he did take that drink and hide himself away, would they have found him and then just killed him, and then that would have caused it? Or if he stays there and they have this huge fight and the whole party gets wiped, could that be what causes it? I mean, there was a death last time that in last session that was so depressing because it's so our fault. It's I'm so sad about that little guy. I loved him, and
yeah,
it's entirely our fault. But
kind of.
I just I'm like, oh god, is what we're doing? Are we just playing into the DM's hands here? Is there any way we can stop this, or are we screwed if we do, screwed if we don't? I love it, honestly.
That was an interesting. You guys took a lot of time planning, and we'll get to that death here in a moment. But you guys took so much time planning these things out, and I honestly was confused because, like, from my understanding, the plan was you were gonna go. If it wasn't gonna work, like if there were too many people, then you were just gonna like make a trade for Zappos, and then you were gonna rescue Zappos. But then when it came down to it, it was like, let's unleash Riken instead and start a fight. And it was like there are 20 of these hobgoblins around.
With 18 AC.
Yeah, with 18. The normal ones had 18 AC. The other ones were higher.
Oh no.
Well, like you had a captain in there. You had Rukvar was in the fight. Then you had some Iron Shadows and Devastators, which are like the wizards. All very high, very strong enemies, which made for, you know, you kind of hit this moment where it's like, is this something you can overcome, or was this a mistake? We won't know until we play the 4th session, because we did end partway through the fight. So we don't know what will actually happen. But what are we all know, if you're watching and haven't seen it, Tandy got blasted with a fireball, and he died after discovering that he was one of the Blood Heirs, one of the Long Rivers. Essentially meaning, as far as you guys know, Zappos is the only one left.
And Zappos has no children.
Yes. And neither did Tandy. Well, we don't know about Zappos. I don't think
he's a bard, right? So
he's a bard, so he might somewhere out there.
Yeah, thousands probably. Very promiscuous.
Yeah, we'll talk to Daniel next week about that and find out the truth. That you had some very specific moments. I wanted to know, like, what was going on in IronBark's head, because you were kind of off to the side and you saw things play out. What was going on in your mind, and what was your, like, obviously you wanted to get Tandy out of there, but what was your plan in that first moment to, like, what were you trying to do, I guess?
Okay, so when it all kicked off again, I had another moment where I was thinking about what I'd previously been thinking about in that session of IronBark taking that. He still had it on him. Nobody knew he was there. He could just go. And maybe get somebody else to drink it, or he drink it, or whatever. I was thinking, like, should I do that? Like, no, it's just not good for, it's not good story. And I want him to be better than that sort of thing. Riken has been a bit of a loose cannon. I think in session 2, he used Fog Cloud on the enemies just out of nowhere. He just did that by himself.
That was after trying to use another more powerful spell on them, but then realizing he was out of range. Or a cantrip, I guess, not a more powerful one. But yeah.
Yeah, he's on a warpath for sure. And I think we had a plan of, like, we had the plan, but I think it had been mentioned during the planning stage. Riken said that if he saw Rukvar, that he was just going to go in, no matter what happened, no matter how many people were there. And I don't know why we didn't say, okay, just don't go, or just hang back if you hear fighting coming. But no, and so I think it's cool that the fight started. I mean, if it's impossible odds, but that makes it, so much better. Like, if I'm sure that 1, 2, or maybe all of us might die, and if we do, it plays into the greater story, and I think that's fine. If we make it out, we're truly the underdogs there, and I think it makes for a really heroic story. As for my plan in the fight, I was thinking, God damn, I'm going to turn into a giant toad, and I'm going to grab the witch with my tongue, and I'm going to flip her about, and that'll be that. Then she was just flanked by all these bloody great hobgoblins, and I was like, oh no, I'm not even going to be able to get close. And then you put, like, 2 little evil fellas in the bushes near me. And then Tandy was there, and the trade went so bad because they immediately saw through Zappos' plan, and it all fell apart pretty quickly and just devolved into wild shape and fighting.
Which is the wild shape. You took a really smart feat with Piercer.
Yeah.
Piercer? Yeah, that was the feat. Which, when you first pitched it to me, I did not understand the ramifications completely. And then later during the game, you were like, oh yeah, because I can bite things and everything's piercing damage. And I was like, oh, dang it.
Well,
But
yeah.
hey,
So
it's
I
fine.
think, I I think I really, really like finding cool combos with stuff like that. And yeah, I think that combo is really cool. That was one of the new feats that just came out as well. I was going to take Warcaster, which I think
I think
Riken took.
everyone has Warcaster.
Yeah, I think
No,
on it,
not
it's
quite, but...
Warcaster just it does so much. It's amazing, and it would have done a lot for IronBark, and it was probably the smart choice as well. But Piercer had just come out, and yeah, it allows you to like reroll one of your piercing damage die hits once per turn, and increases strength of dex by 1. And there's another effect. It's not huge, but it's just really cool that it works with all the bite attacks. Even the toad has piercing damage built in.
Which I wouldn't think of the toad as having piercing damage, but I guess he bites. It counts.
Yeah, I guess so. But I just thought it's a cool combo. It's definitely not really, really strong. It's just cool, I think. And yeah, I mean, God knows we need all the help we can get right now. And if re-rolling a damage die a turn helps, yeah. I'm just a big old hyena running around biting everyone.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah, well, yeah.
For now. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
If let's look ahead a little bit. If you survive this fight and this adventure, what do you see IronBark doing after this?
Okay. I have thought about this, and there's a couple things. If I was being like super, super selfish, and I would sort of want him to retreat back to the Oasis, if everything is sort of achieved and things and are sort of resolved for now. I think that him and Gok are sort of entwined now because they're both throughout time, seemingly, and they'll be pitted against each other in some way. Obviously, Gok being a demigod and IronBark's just a tree. But I think I would like him to go back to the Oasis, and really selfishly, I'd like him to sort of be an NPC in the other campaigns you do. Like, it wouldn't be. I don't. It's not me. Whatever. If you play him and he just comes and he gives them information or guidance, because if he survives, he can, in theory, exist whenever he needs to, if he can somehow control the Oasis or whatever. I think that would be really cool, especially if he becomes more powerful as a druid. I don't see why he couldn't sort of influence that. I think that would be really cool. On a more realistic note, I also thought about the idea of him, like, he might want to become a human or like a mortal race, because I think he sees something beautiful in being born, in creating life, and in dying, like, naturally. Something that is sort of been stolen from him. He's like now given this consciousness, but not. He still wasn't. He's not a true life, I feel. And maybe I think, like, if he sticks with Arsalan, if they both survive, who is his best bud, there could be a world where, many levels on, Arsalan finds the wish spell and uses it somehow to turn IronBark into a human. I think that would be really cool. Or, fix the world's wrongs, world hunger or whatever. I don't know how strong the wish is.
Spell. It has limits, but it's pretty good. It's funny you also mentioned that, because I think Anthony is actually watching right now too. So
hey, bud.
So keep that in mind.
No, I mean, that's just a long way off. I don't know if we ever write like a little epilogue for the characters and what they do sort of after. There's definitely a couple of different ideas, but I think they sort of hinge on whether we survive,
Yeah.
and under what circumstance, and how many of us.
There's a lot of variables going on right now. This is
Yeah.
I was trying to get you guys to feel like this is the end of Infinity Wars kind of moment. So then you can come back and feel more like an end game scenario, but we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, what, like
We'll see.
way
I
further
don't
down the
know.
line?
No, I mean like session 3 is Infinity
Oh,
War and session 4 is Endgame.
oh, okay, okay.
That just the I do a lot. I did a video on like story structure and stuff, and I always like to push characters to the losing point.
Mm.
Where it's like that moment where they can lose. I try to hit that note because I think it's a fun moment. I may have pushed you guys too far. I don't know. I'm not sure
Well,
you can win. I'm not sure. Rice
I
Combo is confident though. He said you won't die. He said screw Rukvar in the chat. So I think you guys are fine.
I don't know. I'm hopeful. I don't know. I mean, it depends how many fireballs these guys have left. And I don't think we've started chewing through their numbers either. I think we need to get rid of the leaders and try and sort of intimidate them into stepping down. I don't know how likely that is, because honestly, it's a bloody mess at the moment. One thing you said there that actually interested me was like push us to the limit and then come back from it. I think this. I remember hearing like a theory about like there's something called like there's a theory of like perfection where you do everything right, you make all the right choices, and you get through it and it's perfect. But then there's something beyond perfection where you get so close to failure that it comes out slightly better, and that is like beyond perfection. And if we get through this, and we all live, fingers crossed, and we succeed, I think we've done beyond perfectly, because it's looking real dire right now. Real
Yes,
bad.
it's looking real tough. Let's
Yeah.
get into some gossip. Let's talk
Okay.
about, because I've done this with the other two. I want to know your thoughts, or IronBark's thoughts on the other characters. So let's
Okay.
start with Riken, because you already
Yeah.
called him a loose cannon once.
Yeah, I'll call him a loose cannon again. I think he's a truly good person. IronBark thinks that he's truly good. He's almost childlike in a way. It's almost like he hasn't. I think he has got a good wisdom score, but I feel like he doesn't have a good wisdom score. And I know that his intelligence is low, but I think, yeah, I feel like he's sort of childlike in a way, and I think his childhood was sort of stolen from him as well. I think he's also got like a pretty damn dark backstory, and his family was murdered and all this sort of stuff. It's pretty dark. But I think what IronBark had, I think, a moment with Riken last session, where he sort of gave him a talking to about his fears and releasing the storm and stuff like that. Yeah,
And
I
then
think.
gave him a good berry.
Yeah, I mean, eventually these good berries will help his brain for sure. it's it's like vitamin D tablets that you take, but
Yeah.
good berries, and eventually he might be
Eventually
okay.
something will happen.
Yeah, something will flip and he'll be fine. No, I think he's fond of him. He's sort of like the child of the group, more so than Tandy or the penguin Barry.
Barry?
Yeah,
Because Barry is like the king,
yeah, he's
Everyone
very well
looks
put
up
together.
to Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, got brilliant legal mind as well. Great lawyer.
Bird
Yeah.
law.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
All right, let's. What about Zappos? What's IronBark's thoughts on Zappos?
I think Zappos is really interesting. He's got such a way with words and with talking to people, something that IronBark doesn't have, and he's very happy to let Zappos talk. A lot of the times when IronBark talks, it seems to get in trouble or get the wrong reaction out of people. And I think he's learning from watching Zappos speak with people. But Zappos can say some bloody horrible things to people. He can hurt people with his words. That's pretty impressive. He can speak different languages and insult them and invent kings and whole stories to do with these hobgoblins. Zavis is really interesting. I think he really likes the whole group, but I think he has a lot to learn from Zavis, just about etiquette with people, speech.
That's a good point. Etiquette and like learning that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that about IronBark because he was essentially a warrior his whole life, and then he was asleep, and now he's just like figuring it out.
Yeah, I guess he's in a way he's like a baby as well, like Riken. Like he knows things, he's seen a lot of things, but he doesn't know things.
Yeah.
Never had an upbringing. He never learned what's wrong and what's right, and how to interpret people's feelings and all this sort of stuff. And I think like just watching Zavis just interact with people and just influence people, and yeah, I think there's a lot to learn there. He's on a crash training course. Don't know, some sort of fast course to being better with his words.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's interesting about Zavis because even for me as the DM, there's been times where Daniel threw me for a loop with Zavis, where like just in the second session when he was like, you have to go, talk to your people and rally your troops, and I was like, oh crap. Okay, I didn't think we were gonna do that right now, but all right, I'll play ball, and it was like interesting character choice in that case, which I wasn't anticipating, but that's half the fun of it, I think.
Well, Daniel's the forever DM as well, isn't he? So he knows,
he is. So
he knows what to do to make your life a little bit harder, for sure.
Yeah. He knows how to make me squirm a little bit, I guess, in the DM seat. But we'll talk more on. What was that?
It was smart what you did to try and get them to. Yeah, for sure.
That's for sure. We'll talk with him next week on all that. But let's talk about Arsalan. Your best bud. We mentioned that earlier. You guys built that into your backstories. Just in the session 0, you guys came up with the connection that they had. But how has IronBark seen Arsalan change and grow in the campaign so far?
So, I think Arsalan, when they first met, he wasn't great at magic. Arsalan is sort of middle aged, isn't he? He's sort of getting into magic quite late in life. Yeah, I think he is sort of middle aged, and I imagine him sort of like, as opposed to like all the elves and sylvan creatures and all the majesty that IronBark was used to just watching for hundreds of thousands of years in the Oasis, having Arsalan just like crash through the brush was just such an interesting idea. That Arsalan isn't sort of, he doesn't use nature magic like IronBark is what he used to. He's just a really smart bloke who can influence and read from these books, and I think he interests him. But I think more than that, he really is his first friend, the first human maybe that he's come face to face with that wasn't necessarily trying to kill him. And yeah, he awoke him. And there's a moment as well where IronBark, when he was trapped in the tree, Arsalan thought about maybe taking the magic in his core, in IronBark's core, for himself. And he did, and he chose to awaken IronBark and have an ally. And I think that says quite a lot about Arsalan. I know one of my other characters, Sully, he's a very, very dark character. He would have just killed IronBark, taken that power for himself. So I think that says a lot about, he's another really good person. I think he's got a lot to learn there. Yeah. They're best buds for sure.
And he's got some roles to work on.
Oh man. Yeah, that might be the old age. He can't hold his hands still.
Yeah. He's only 35.
Oh, okay.
35. He's not like he's 50 middle age. I do picture that though. I did in one of my other campaigns. I do have a player who is an older player or an older character who's like 50. And then I played another role-playing game that's a whole different system where I have a character who's like 75. And those are the ones who are like our old age. The old age of those characters really gets in the way of things sometimes. But it's always an interesting choice. I did think that was interesting about him, though, that he chose to be an older person getting into magic when it's, traditionally in fantasy, it's always a young person trained from,
Yeah.
when they were a child, kind of scenario. Um, yeah, so that's interesting. Ironbark has a very, it reflects on the character of Ironbark, the fact that he looks at everyone as like they're all good people, and he can see that in them, and they all are. No, yeah, Riken's a little hot-headed. Zavis talks a lot, and Arsalan is, working on his magic stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but it seems Ironbark tends to see the best in people, um, quite a bit. So, what was the moment in Ironbark's life when he decided to look at things that way? Because he essentially went from fighting in war to being in the Oasis and then observing. Was there a moment in his history where it was like a switch was flipped?
I think there might have been. There's a couple factors. I'm sorry if I've been going on too much, but I think one of the things would be that he did die. Like
Mm-hmm.
he and there might have been some part of him that took some time to die, and that's what resurfaced. He remembers very little of that, the wars that he was in, and I don't even know how many people, humans, elves, dwarves, he might have killed, but that part of him definitely died.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like what came back was there's an essence of that, but just like this sort of pure soul of just like being in tune with nature. And I think he is just a good. Now he is just a good spirit. He is just a good person, a good robot person. It just doesn't understand everything. But as for his outlook on the rest of the party and his hopeful outlook, I think it just comes from that wisdom he has of like all the things he witnessed in there. He saw life happen. He saw, as I said, like life begin, life happen at parties and festivals, druidic festivals. He saw all
Mm-hmm.
of these walks of life, and I think, and he saw death, and I think that sort of humbles people. I think, or at least it humbled him for sure. And then I think there's a moment here that I've got in the backstory where, uh, yeah, where Arsalan, when he awoke him, he took Ironbark's sort of hand that was sort of gnarled in the tree, and he said they hadn't spoken before. Ironbark was just like couldn't move; he's completely immobile,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, "Come with me, friend. I was told I would meet an ally here. It must be you." And he awoke and he said, "Tell me, friend, what is a friend?" And I think that's just a really nice little bit there. That's the very end of his backstory, but I really like
Mm-hmm.
that as a that's something completely new to him, and I think that he wants the group and everyone he can be to be friends, family, and to live life as best he can.
That's great. That's a really fun. He's been a fun character to have. I'm really glad we were able to come up with something interesting and kind of unique to bring to the table. I think everyone in the game has brought like a really fun character that, uh, yeah, I really think they make the story that we're telling here is like all your guys' choices and the stuff you have going on. We have a question. Jack Grimble, the guy who wrote the song
Yeah,
last
that was
week,
great.
he comes in. He always asks the same question because he likes to get the information for the new players. So,
Okay,
what is your best advice for a new player?
okay. Um, I've made yeah. So I've now made four characters in a sort of in maybe under a year and a half now, and definitely with the first one, I thought a lot about his backstory. He had a lot of Viking backstory, like um, interactions with gods, things like that, and it all came into his backstory, and it never came up again really, and it just which is completely fine. He joined halfway through the campaign. It was Kestis tribe. There's no god's influence,
Yeah.
whatever. But that sort of just informed how he was played. same again with the second character. I love Viking stuff, like and the Nordic gods. He had more Nordic god influence, and that influenced his backstory. The third character, me and the DM worked really hard, and another player who's actually his like adopted stepfather. Huge amounts of story that really impacts the way he plays. But I think with IronBark, it was more like I just had like bullet points of how he'd act, and then just let it happen as we play. Like let him sort of evolve, and only after the fact have I gone back and like really sort of finalized his story and written it. And I think be a little bit loose with it. I'd say don't get too hung up on the backstory. I think you can. Some people love writing out the whole backstory and going with that, and I think that's really cool. And you can do that. I'd say maybe try sometimes being a little bit loose with it and just letting it flow. And another thing I'd say, like maybe more important, is like I really think you got to look at the mechanics of the class that you're going to play, which might be different to what some other people say. But I think a lot of the game you're going to be playing the character, and you're going to be in combat, and you're going to be wanting to. If you want to sneak around, you have to try and think of a character that might be good at that. If you want to be like a big brutish warrior, you got to think about like what mechanics and what you want from that, and try and make cool combos work. I think you got to really love playing the character as well, even if so that you just enjoy the time of just rolling the dice and the combat as well. I think that's a big part of it as well. Yeah, I wouldn't say more so than the backstory, but I think just really enjoy the mechanics of what you're going to be playing, because I know people have like picked up classes like rangers or sometimes wizards, and they just didn't really like playing the characters, and they put a lot of effort into the backstory, and then they just didn't like just the mechanics of playing them, and I think that's a shame. So I think really look at the mechanics and just think about that you're going to be playing that and be happy with that, and then go from there and make a really, really cool backstory or be loose with it.
Average campaign is more like a marathon. It's like you got to be ready to play that character for the long haul. Like my first character I'm still playing is a rogue swashbuckler. And I looking back, and there are moments where I'm like, I should have picked a different class. But it was my first character. I do like playing him, but at the same time, it's like had I understood more of the mechanics of different classes, I might have made a different choice that early on. Do you know this person, Sparrowhawk?
Yeah, that's my best friend.
Buddy? All right.
Yeah, that's the guy who got me into D&D. Why? What's he saying?
He said hi earlier, and then he said that's me when you were telling a story about your characters.
Oh.
So I think he was. Okay. So I had to confirm that he is that. Welcome, Sparrowhawk. Good job getting Chris into the game. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
He's been
Thank
fun.
You, man.
You should also torture him in your own games a little more.
No.
I don't know if he does, but.
Yeah, no. We in the other campaign that we played together, he plays sort of evil stepdad to my character.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
He's his dad. Okay, so he's Daddy Hawk. Is what.
Oh no! I just read what he said. I'm potentially going to kill him. I hope not. I might kill you though. So
it updated up for you faster than for me. So, yeah, maybe. Hopefully. That's fun. Any last words of advice, Chris, before we end the stream?
Oh god, I waffled a bit there. Yeah, I think. What, for character creation or just in general?
Just in general gameplay.
I think D&D is amazing. Everyone should play it as much as they can. Really, get some frequent games going. I think you can improve yourself and your speaking skills and your people skills as well with D&D, which I think is really cool. I say improve your people skills and speaking skills, and then fumble loads of words. Play lots of D&D, and I think another thing that I really like, and what I really like with the campaign that you're doing and my friend is doing, is that it's not the DM just narrating a story. I think the players have to be telling the story as well, and I think that adds so much. You get so much more invested in it as well that way. And I think, it's a group effort. You're telling the story together.
Yeah.
I love it for that. Yeah, that's really cool.
Right. I'm going to piggyback off of that point because you just made something that I had been thinking about, and it is that idea. A lot of times, new players, they get in the mindset that they're going to sit there and wait for the DM to hand over the control and say, what do you want? Which is a constant. We always ask that. But if you're a player and you feel like you want to do something, it's like just speak up, just interject a little bit. Unless the DM is, describing a location or doing something that's kind of important to the story, you can interject. And DMs, I think, love that. I love that when that happens because then I'm like, all right, less work for me to do. I just get to react a little bit. With that, thank you, Chris, for joining me today. We're playing session 4 tomorrow, I believe. We still have to get confirmation from Daniel and Zach, but we'll make sure that happens, and then we'll see how this game plays out. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, success or fail.
Yeah,
we're in it now.
We're in it, and then that episode will air on Friday. So anyone who hasn't caught session 3, go watch session 3, and then you can watch session 4 on Daniel did say yes. I must have missed that in Discord earlier. So we will see you guys all Friday. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
And have a good one.
Cheers.